They grew up being told they could be anything, that the world was an open map, a feast of opportunities waiting for anyone willing to study, work hard, and follow the rules. But today, what we see are people who wake up already wishing the day was over. People who are tired to their core, an exhaustion that coffee can't fix and sleep can't cure. They are called lazy by those who don't understand their struggle. They are called too sensitive by those who never carried the invisible weight they bear. They are told they're weak for not toughing it out like the old days. But what if the problem isn't a lack of grit? What if the problem is that they are trying to carry the world on their backs while the ground is crumbling beneath their feet? A generation that entered the workforce in the shadow of financial collapses, that learned to compete in a world that never sleeps, connected to thousands but feeling profoundly alone at the end of the night. Perhaps you recognize yourself in these words. Perhaps you feel that tightness in your chest every time you open your email or see the notifications piling up. Stay with me until the end, because today we aren't talking about guilt. We're talking about context. We're going to understand why so many millennials are burned out without even realizing when their inner light started to fade. When we talk about millennials, Generation Y, we're talking about those born between 1981 and 1996. They are the children of the transition. They watched the world move from landlines to smartphones. They lived a childhood of playing outside, waiting for cartoons on TV, and renting VHS tapes on Saturdays. They know the silence of the analog world. But their adulthood? That was handed over entirely to the digital machine. Unlike Gen Z, who were born with the algorithm shaping their desires, millennials remember what life was like before being always available. This bridge is crucial because it created a cruel expectation. They know how to live offline, but the world demands they perform online 24/7. This is the generation that used MSN to chat at night and now uses WhatsApp or Slack to solve work problems at 10 p.m. on a Sunday. They were taught that a college degree was the golden ticket to a stable life, but many found themselves with a piece of paper in one hand and crippling student debt in the other, facing a job market that demands 10 years of experience for an entry-level role. It's the feeling of doing everything right, yet the prize at the end was canceled. Millennial burnout didn't come from a single traumatic event. It's built from small moments that erode the mind. It's the phone vibrating on the dinner table, making your heart race just seeing your boss's name. It's the feeling of guilt when you sit on the couch to watch a movie because a voice in your head says you should be producing something or learning a new skill. It's the phenomenon of looking at your credit card bill, the price of rent, and the cost of groceries, and realizing you work twice as hard as your parents did, yet you can't afford the house they bought at your age. It's decision fatigue, reaching the end of the day and having zero energy left to even choose what to eat because your brain has already drained its dopamine supply solving fires at work, navigating traffic, and faking a smile on Zoom calls. They were the first generation to live under the pressure of constant comparison. You don't just compare yourself to your neighbor anymore, you compare yourself to the influencer who's your age and seems to have a life out of a luxury commercial. It's their stage versus your backstage, full of dirty dishes and fatigue. This creates a silent internal clock whispering that you're behind in your career, behind in marriage, behind in life.
First, functional exhaustion. You know that person who hits every deadline, who's the pillar of the company, who organizes the office events? But when they get home, they collapse in tears or stare at the ceiling for hours, unable to move. That is functioning on the outside while being broken on the inside. Many live between 2 or 3 side hustles and endless courses, trying to stay relevant in a world that discards people like electronic waste. Second, the inability to disconnect. The millennial no longer knows when the workday ends. The office lives in their pocket. Their mind keeps working even during sleep, mentally reviewing spreadsheets, answering imaginary emails, and worrying about tomorrow before today is even over. If you feel like you never truly shut off, you aren't alone. It's a learned pattern in an environment that never stops. Third, Emotional sensitivity. Often judged as weakness, but in reality, it's the last line of defense. They are the first generation to name what they feel, to talk about anxiety, boundaries, and burnout, not out of victimhood, but because they realized that swallowing suffering in silence only leads to a total collapse. When a millennial sets a boundary, they aren't being difficult. They are trying not to die for a job that would replace them in a week if they were gone. Perhaps after hearing all this, you'll begin to see this generation through different eyes, not as lost or fragile people, but as a generation sent to the front lines of an epic global shift. They survived crises that destroyed dreams, faced debt and brutal technological changes, and despite being exhausted, they keep trying to build something that makes sense. When we understand the context, judgment loses its power. If you recognized your routine in these words, or if you remembered someone you see trying so hard without ever feeling like enough, maybe this video is the sign you needed. The exhaustion you feel is not a character flaw. It is the result of a world that accelerated faster than the human heart can keep up with. Understanding this doesn't pay the bills, but it creates a bridge of peace with yourself. You aren't late. You're just trying to walk on ground that was never flat. If this message touched a sensitive part of your story, you might want to follow the next chapters of this series about who we really are behind the screens. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they aren't alone in this exhaustion. Now, tell me in the comments, what is the one thing that exhausts you the most in today's world? I will read every single one. Would you like me to generate a specific American-style thumbnail prompt for this script to maximize your click-through rate?